Hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. And I'm pleased to present Sarah Mitchell. Hang on, let me just get a little bit closer here to the mic. Move my computer screen around so we do this right. Pleased to present Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation department. Okay, so for the next couple of weeks, in fact, I'm going to say several weeks, we're going to take a look at TPL, the Transform Programming Language, as there's a lot of untapped stuff there that you can use in your own applications. And we are going to begin again with, I think, a pretty good pre-recording of how we use TPL to use a barcode scanner to start pulling data out of a SQL Server database or SQLite database that's kept up on the device. So the beginning of it is just a quick review of how you get stuff up onto the device. I know we've done a big, we did actually a couple of webinars recently about on-device assets, about updating the manifest file and the download policies and all that good stuff. So we're going to touch on that just briefly here, but also we're going to dive right into some actual programming in TPL. And for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, I think you're really going to enjoy it. We're here, of course, to take questions, but let's get started. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Doing barcode lookups from onboard SQL databases. Now, this is a multi-step process, and it does require a little bit of TPL code, but it only requires actually just 10 lines of code, and I'm going to show you exactly how that works today. So let me give you an example, first of all, of what I'm talking about. Imagine that you have a piece of equipment and you are a field services employee or technician, and you're out in the field and you want to scan a piece of equipment and look up information about that equipment from an online database, an onboard database. So this is an offline database or one that'll work when you don't have a signal. So in this example, here's a piece of equipment. It's got a barcode on the side. And if you scanned it, for example, in this sort of fake example, we've got a scan code that comes through, as well as a lookup, which shows you the model of the equipment, the serial number of equipment, and a picture of the equipment as well. This one also has some notes about when it was last serviced. So this is part of the boiler minder example, which I had shown, I don't know, many months ago. But this is, and it's been documented as well in the Alpha Transform Users Guide, how to do this, but I'd like to really just walk you through it step by step so that you know all of the pieces that are involved, because that will hopefully demystify it for you. So let's take a look. To set this up, there are a bunch of steps that we're going to go through. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a SQLite database. And now, right now, the information that I have about all of the equipment, its serial numbers, its make, its models, what picture is associated with it, is all contained in a SQL Server database online, although it could be in a different format. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create a SQLite database. That is basically like a big JSON file that lives on board the phone, and it can be accessed by TPL. The next thing is, besides the databases, I'm keeping the pictures. I wanted to have photos of the equipment, but I'm not keeping them in the database. I'm doing them as separate files so that my database references these files. They're not stored in the database, and there's some good reasons for that. It keeps the SQL Server, SQLite database small, and it makes it faster to search through. The next thing we're going to do once we have created our assets and selected our photos, we're going to upload them all to S3 or some other place, but S3 is really the place you want to use. It's built in. And you can use other places. You can use Azure, but if you're using our tools, I think you'll find S3 is a little easier, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then we're going to add that database to the manifest. That's a special file that tells the Alpha Transform application what files it's supposed to download. And we're also going to update its policy to let it know when it's supposed to download those files onto the device. If you don't set up a policy, even if you have a manifest, the data is not going to be downloaded. Next, we're going to basically set up a white label listing, which will allow our TPL code to access, or actually our HTML code to access images that are stored locally. In this case, it'll be pictures of the equipment. The very next thing will be to create a placeholder HTML or fields. I'm going to show you that in a minute. In other words, build out the form where we want that information to display on the form. And then the last thing we need to do is just write the little bit of TPL code that's necessary to make all of this work together. So let's get started on that process. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the SQLite database, and we're going to upload it to Amazon S3. And to do that, I'm going to use Alpha Anywhere. Now, I think everyone on the call is familiar with Alpha Anywhere, but if you're watching this video later and you're not familiar with Alpha Anywhere, it is our low-code solution for building web and mobile applications. And it includes for building and deploying. But the builder, also known as the Alpha Anywhere developer, has some tools in it that you can use with Transform. And one of these tools is called the On-Device Data Builder for Transform. And let me show you actually how you get to that. Here's the screen right here. So I'm going to pop over here, and you get to that right from within Alpha Anywhere. Here's the Alpha Anywhere IDE. I'm going to go into Tools. Once I have the Web Projects control panel open, I'm going to go to Tools, More, Transform Utilities, On-Device Data Builder for Transform Applications. And here I can start adding all of the assets that I would like to store on that phone, and I'll do that just by clicking the Add Item button here. I'm not going to go through all of these steps. I have done a video on that, and you'll find that video in our list of videos. If you look in the chat window, I've actually included our Transform Tuesday video page list. And the one in particular you're going to want to look for is April 2nd, 2019. And that's going to show you how you build out the databases and how you upload them. And I just go through everything step by step. I also go through it step by step in the user's guide for Alpha Transform. And actually, I forgot to put that link there. So let me grab that link for you as well. And I'm going to paste that into the chat window. Here it is, Transform User's Guide, chapters 1 through 7. And you'll find this actually in chapter 7, the last chapter here in that PDF. Okay, super. So once you have completed this step, you will have created the database, and you will have uploaded the database to Amazon S3, to a storage bucket there, where the app will be able to pull it down. Now, there are two other things we need to do. So while the assets are there now up on Amazon S3, we need to tell Alpha Transform which assets and where to go get them. So the manifest file, which I let Alpha Anywhere actually create for me, is basically just some JSON text. And here, if you read the first line, you'll see the first line is a zip file called equipment.zip, and it's a SQLite database. And the next thing is basically a folder, and that contains all of my pictures. It's a type folder, and that's all I need to put in the manifest. Now the manifest goes here in Transform Central, where it says define on-device assets. And so I just pasted that stuff right in here. The other thing you can do is you can actually have this point to a file instead, and have that file contain your on-device assets. Again, that's all described in the user's guide. Now, back over here, I needed to also create a policy file. The policy file is also inserted on that same page in Transform Central. It hangs out down here in this lower box. And let me just walk you through what the policy file does. And again, this is covered in the user's guide, as well as in the documentation. So the policy guide, first of all, points out to the device when it should download these assets. When should it download the picture, and when should it download the database? And so we've got it set up so that it happens either at login, so as soon as you log into your account, it should pull those assets down, as well as on demand. So on demand means that when the user is in the application, they can open up a menu and they can say download assets. It's one of the choices there. I'll show that to you in a minute, and you'll be able to pull it down that way. There's some information as to when you can download the assets. I tend to make it so that when you switch to a new account, that you download the assets. I don't have it set that way, that you delete the assets, just so that it's not taking up space in the phone. But you can there are other options as well. You can do it just on logout, or you can do it whenever you ask from a menu choice that you want to delete the options. You can do that. Okay, so that's download, that's delete. The next one is path prefixes, and this one's actually quite important. We don't allow you to simply refer to files on your device in HTML. And we don't let you do that for security reasons. Instead, we make you whitelist them. In other words, create a type of alias. And you do that using a path prefix. So in this case, we're saying whenever you see the word equip pics in my HTML, I want you to replace it with this syntax here, which tells the device, look locally on the device in a folder called equip pics for whatever file is going to come after that sign, that /. Okay, again explained, but I thought I'd just explain it one more time. And so that gets pasted in there. Cool. All right, so going back to our to-do list, we'll see we've created the SQLite database. We've uploaded that database to S3, and we've uploaded that file folder with all the pictures to S3. We've added data to the manifest so it knows where to pick up those assets. We've updated the policy to let it know when to download the assets onto the device. And we've configured that policy so that it's going to let us refer to local photos on our device, on our phone or on our tablet. Okay, so that's where we are. The next thing we need to do is actually create the form. So I've created a really simple form here. It's got 3 fields and 1 HTML block. The 3 fields are serial number, which is a scanner type field, and that's what we're going to be basing our lookup off of. So when you scan in a serial number, it's going to then look up the make and the model. So I've created 2 other fields here, make and model, and those are the ones that are going to be in, and that data is going to be inserted when we do a serial number lookup. The other thing that's going to happen is our HTML block is going to show a picture of the equipment. And let me show you that syntax right there. I don't know if I can blow this up or not. Let me try it. Oh yeah, I can. Cool. So in my HTML block, actually, it might be easier if I just show this to you live, come to think of it. So let me just pop over to, hang on one second. And we will, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, so here I am in Alpha Transform. And I'm going to double click on my form that I've created for this purpose. And I've created this HTML block right here. And the HTML block, and I know most of you here are familiar with HTML. Let me just open this up a little bit. Is basically just an image tag. So image source equals equip pics dot. Now, if you remember, the system, when it sees this word here, because we have it defined as a policy, is going to know to look locally onto our is going to know locally. So this is sorry HTML. And it's going to know locally to look for the pictures that are in the folders. Over here is a block of TPL, and that TPL has a global variable in it called equipment photo. So when this runs, this part is going to tell Transform to look in the correct folder. And this variable, we're going to set that to the name of the photo that it's supposed to display. Okay. If this doesn't make a ton of sense just yet, don't worry, it will once I start showing you the coding portion behind it. So let me just shrink that down a little bit. Okay, so we've got our form built out. Let me shrink that down a little so it fits. There we go. Now we need to build the script. So let's go take a look at that script. This is the TPL script that we'll need to do the lookup. First of all, the first thing to notice is where I put the script. I've put it on the onChanged event for the serial number. So in other words, when I look up a serial number, when I change the serial number, this is when I want this script to fire. And this is what it's going to do. I originally had hard-coded in a serial number just to make my life easier when I was doing it, but I've actually commented that out. You can comment out things using just a single apostrophe at the beginning of the line. But instead, what we've done here is I'm setting a variable serial equal to the serial number field that we had just set. Then I'm setting another variable called SQL, and I'm setting it equal to a SQL statement. I think most of you are familiar with SQL statements. And I'm just doing a select star from the equipments table where serial equals question mark. Now, question mark has got a special meaning here. It means that it is an alias, so it's going to get replaced later on when I actually use this SQL statement, which is in fact in the very next line. So I've created another variable here called SQL results, and I've set that equal to a TPL function called PhoneGap TF execute SQL. And this, as you might expect, executes my SQL statement and puts the results into the SQL results database. This takes 3 parameters. In this case, it can take 2, and it can take more than 3, but in this case, it only needed 2. The first is the name of the database. I believe this always has to be in uppercase. So I've tried it in lowercase, and it did not work. So make sure you do this in uppercase. The DB portion could be lowercase, but put that in uppercase. The next thing is SQL. That's the statement that I need to execute against this particular database. And then lastly, serial, that is the argument. And so that's that question mark here. It's going to get replaced by serial, and that serial number is the one that we just looked up. Okay, so if all went well, then SQL results is going to now contain some answers, some results, basically. But first we check to see if that's the case. So we say if the length of SQL results is equal to 0, that means we didn't find anything. So I want to set the make equal to not found and the model equal to not found. And then I want to just end the script here with this return statement. Next up, okay, so that's what happens if it doesn't go well. Otherwise, we assume it does go well, in which case we set another variable called row equal to the first row back that we get from the SQL results. Now we're looking up serial numbers, so there should only be 1 row coming back. Also, as a quick reminder, these are 0-based indices, so the first line is actually called 0. That's why I have a 0 right here. Okay, I think you guys are with me so far. Next up, we're going to set the field called make equal to the result that we got back, row dot, and then the field that we got back, make, and model, we're going to set the row to model. You're saying, how did I know the names of those fields coming back? Well, I made the database, so I should know them. But let me show you the database that I actually did set up for it. Let me close out of here. And here is just a DBF version of the same thing. But basically, my database that I'm put into a SQLite format has got 1,000 records in it, and it contains the equipment ID. That's an internal number that I don't really use for anything. The serial number, that's the one that we're looking up against. The make, the model, and also the photo or the name of the picture. And I've just named them EQ and then a number after it. And some of them duplicate because sometimes we have duplicate pieces of equipment. All right, so that's my database. Let's go back here to PowerPoint. So basically, when this changes, we create a SQL statement. We execute that SQL statement using an argument. The argument is the serial number. We check to see if results came back. If they don't, we just quit out and just tell the user that they weren't found. If we do find it, we're going to take the very first row, which is row 0, and we're going to set those 2 fields equal to make and to model. We're also going to create a global variable. You see my global variable, it starts here with a caret. So it's called EQ photo, and that's going to equal row.photo. Now, I could have set this equal to a field, for example, but I wanted to use it as a variable because I wanted to use that variable in my HTML block. And so if you look back here, EQ photo is the name of that global variable that I have in my script, if that works. So basically, this is it. When I run my form, I'm all ready to go. I can scan a serial number. If it doesn't find the serial number, like in this case, it tells me that it wasn't found, and I get a blank picture. But if it was found, then it shows me the make, the model, and a picture of it. And I can actually demonstrate this for you live. Not that you don't believe me, but it's kind of cool seeing it live. So let's just do that. All right, so there's my phone. Okay, and let me just open up Transform. Okay, I'm going to add a new form, and I'm doing this form for testing form. And I'm going to scan a serial number, and I have a sheet here with all these different ones. This one is, oops. I should be able to, oops, that's weird. It's because it's giant. Oh, there we go, got one, okay. So I got one here, and now you'll see that it looked up its serial number, it looked up the make from the database, it looked up the efficiency from the database using the serial number, and it looked up the name of the picture. So that's really all there is to it, to making a database lookup. It is these steps here. Close this, get this out of the way. Stop mirroring. Basically, you create the SQLite database, you upload it someplace where you can get it. Typically, that's S3, Amazon S3. You create a database, you create a manifest entry, or an entry in the manifest for the database. You upload the policy data. You configure it so that you're allowed to access the pictures in your HTML. Then you create your fields in your HTML, and then you write the TPL code to perform the lookup. So that's that. Let's talk about doing a couple of little refinements though here, and then I'll be here to take some pictures. So over here, we're going to go to Boink. We're going to go to HTML. Now, let's say, for example, if you see here in my display, I've got this big, empty, ugly-looking box, right? If I can't look up the photo, I don't want to have this empty box here. So here I might want to do an if statement to say, only show me the picture if there's a picture to be shown. So let's double-click on this, and I'm sorry, click on this to select it, and we're going to hit plus, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose this if statement. So I'm going to say enclose. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if, I'm going to insert a field name, if make is equal to, is not equal to not found, and so if it looks it up and it says it's not found, I don't want to display this, but I also don't want to display it if it's blank. So let's make it so if it's blank. If make, oops, shouldn't have double clicked. If make is not equal to nothing, so we need to make sure that it's not found and it's not nothing. Under those two circumstances, that's when it should display. So I've done this properly. I should be all set. It looks like I'm missing my, I've got my end of tag there. Great. So let's hit save. Let's upload this. And let's take a look on the phone and see if it works. Okay. Done. Add form. Now keep in mind, I just made a change to my form, so don't forget you always have to refresh when you make a change to the design of your form so that it knows to pull down the new version of it. So far this looks good. I don't see any big blank area down here. So I'm going to say tap to scan, and I'm going to scan a barcode. There we go. And hopefully, okay, so it does display the picture like it's supposed to. But now, instead, let's go to serial number, and I'm going to say, I'm sorry. Okay, let's scan another serial number. I happen to have one here, which I know is no good. And here it is. I'm going to scan that one. And it should say not found, and as it says not found, you'll see it actually shut off that HTML preview area so that it's not in our way. So that's just a little refinement that you can do at the end. So I hope that you guys have found this helpful. If you have any questions now. I just cut myself off there. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar interface. We will be continuing our discussion, getting more into TPL over the next several weeks. So if you have specific questions, especially about TPL, go ahead and send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. I'd like to thank you all for attending there today. Thank you very much, Sarah, for joining me. And we will see you next Tuesday at our next Transform Tuesday. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.